Hungarian Folk Tales. The Two Princes with Hair of Gold. Once upon a time there was a young prince who left his home looking for a bride. He was riding through a village when three girls watched him pass. The eldest girl said, "If that prince married me, I would make him wear a linen shirt." That was a joke, of course. The middle girl said, "I would make him sleep on a sack of straw." And the youngest girl said, "Well, if he married me, I would give him 2 sons with hair of gold." The prince's coachman overheard all of this and he told his master. So the prince said, "Go and get the girl who said she would give me 2 boys with hair of gold." The coachman called the girl over and the prince told her to join him in his royal carriage. Time quickly passed and the young queen became heavy with child, but before she could give birth, the king had to go and fight. There was an old witch in the court who had teeth of iron and she had a daughter. She would have liked the king to have married her daughter, but when he married another, she hated the young queen very much. When the king went off to war, she said to herself, "Just wait, queen, you will pay for all of this." The day came when the queen gave birth to 2 beautiful sons with hair of gold. The witch with the iron teeth stole them and put 2 puppies in their place. Then she buried the 2 boys opposite each other in the ground around the fish pond. The king was told the news that the queen had given birth to 2 puppies and he had also lost the battle that day. This and the bad news about his wife made him very angry. He wrote a letter and sent it home. In the letter, he ordered that the queen and the 2 puppies should be thrown into the pond where a great whale lived. As soon as the messenger was sent away, he began to regret what he had ordered to be done. When the king arrived home from the battle, he married the witch's daughter. 2 trees bearing golden pears grew on the spot where the 2 princes with hair of gold were buried, and the king liked nothing better than to sit in their shade. The witch did not like this and told her daughter to tell the king to cut the pear trees down, and she nagged him until he had both trees cut down. From their wood 2 beds were made, one for the king and one for the queen. The witch ordered the splinters, twigs and branches to be burned. But no one noticed a passing goat that gobbled up 2 small twigs from the tree. When the queen and king were sleeping in their beds one night, the queen's bed asked the other, "Dear brother, is that weight not too heavy for you?" And the other bed answered, "It's not heavy at all, as my burden is my dear father. But mine's too heavy, as I have to bear my enemy." The witch was not asleep and she overheard the beds talking. The next morning she ordered her daughter to burn the 2 beds lest her sin come to light. The 2 beds were burned that very day. The witch with the iron teeth and her daughter were now convinced that they faced no more threats. But then the goat gave birth to 2 kids. The 2 little kids had hair of gold. The witch was shocked when she learned of this. She told her daughter to ask the king to have the 2 kids killed, and she could only recover if she ate their meat. The goat kids were killed, and the witch ordered that every strand of their golden hair should be cleared away. But as the kids' innards were washed in the stream, 2 little pieces turned into 2 goldfish. The 2 fish grew and grew until they were caught by a fisherman one day. He pulled the net to shore and his joy turned to shock when he saw the 2 goldfish turn into 2 handsome young men with hair of gold. The two princes had been buried 17 years before, and so now the two young men were 17. They duly thanked the fisherman for catching them and asked him to take them to the king, as they knew a fine poem they wanted to recite for him. They knew they would be rewarded for their performance, and they promised to give this reward to the fisherman for his troubles. The fisherman shook all over with fear, but he agreed to take the two young men in the hope that he would receive a rich reward. The young men were announced to the king, and the king gave the order to let them in. The witch with the iron teeth saw what would happen, and she tried her best to keep them out. But the king eventually met the two youths in spite of all her tricks, and she tried to follow them in and convince the king not to believe the two young men. But the king resisted, saying, "Don't meddle, mother-in-law. This is my business and not yours." The two young men recited a poem to the king, and in that poem they told him their mother's story and their own. They told the king that the whale had swallowed their mother alive and that she was still alive inside the whale's belly. They told the king to catch the whale and they would recover their mother. They also asked the king to richly reward the fisherman for his good deed. The witch with the iron teeth constantly tried to interrupt the youths and did all she could to make the king disbelieve them. But the king paid all his attention to the two young men. The first thing the king did was to order that the whale be caught. The queen emerged from the whale alive, and the king begged her to forgive him. She had survived the ordeal intact. Then the king ordered his two sons and wife and the witch and her daughter to appear before the royal council. The king put the question to the council: "What does a witch deserve who tried to kill two boys and their dear mother, ruin their reputation and deprive a father of his family? What should her punishment be?" So the royal council ordered that the witch and her daughter should be tied to the tails of two horses and dragged through the city. Then they had to be chopped into four and their bodies nailed to the four corners of the city. The queen and her two sons begged for mercy for both of them, but to no avail, and the sentence was duly carried out. The king gave a rich reward to the fishermen. There was a fabulous feast, and the people of the land and the royal family lived happily ever after. Hungarian Folk Tales. The Little Pooly Dog. Once upon a time, a very, very long time ago, Jesus roamed the earth with St. Peter. They sought shelter for the night and knocked on many doors of many houses, but no one would let them in because they were dressed as lowly beggars. One day they came to the mansion house of a rich landowner. "Let us see if these good people will accommodate us for the night." So the two lowly beggars entered the house, where they were made warmly welcome. Their kind hosts made them a hot supper and gave them soft beds to sleep in that night. The next morning, they thanked their kind hosts and left to go on their way. And as they left, Jesus said, "Peter, this man is rich and has everything in the world he needs, and yet there is still one vital thing that he lacks. We shall give him the gift of a beautiful baby boy, and we will provide that boy with whatever he needs whenever he asks for it." So the rich man called his servant John, and John overheard what the two beggars had said. Soon the woman of the house became heavy with child. And she gave birth to a beautiful baby boy. Soon after the baby was born, the rich man had to travel to the local village, and his wife stayed at home with their young child. Then John had an idea. He cut the throat of a hen and smeared the red blood around the wife's mouth to make the rich landlord think that she had eaten the child. And then he stole away, taking the child with him. They rode and rode until they came to the town where the king lived. "Here," John said to the boy, "do you see, son, what a splendid palace the king lives in?" "I do, father." "Now ask for a much better one at the other end of the town." And so the boy asked for a palace, and it really was much more spectacular than the one the king owned. The locals soon began to gossip about the magnificent palace that had sprouted out of the ground overnight. Even the king became curious to see for himself, and so he went to the brand new palace and declared that it really was much grander than his own and had everything a man could wish for in a home. The king soon came to like John, and so he let him marry his beautiful daughter. But after the wedding was over, the princess began to question John. "Tell me, John, where did you get this beautiful boy from if you say that you have never been married before? And how come you own such a glorious home? Don't nag me, wife. I shall tell you everything one day." One day, when the boy was grown, he arrived home from school in a horse-drawn carriage. His wife told John that she would not live with him for a day longer if he did not tell her from where he got the boy and the palace. And so John began to explain. As the two of them were talking, John said to his wife, "We forgot to tell the coachman to take the boy home." And as they opened the door, they saw that the boy had been standing outside and heard every word they had said. They called him to eat, but instead the boy went down to the stables and told the coachman to saddle him a horse as he planned to leave. When the horse was saddled, he told his father, "Now, John, you should turn into a black pooly dog and follow me." Then the boy, who had no name, left for home. By evening, he arrived at a mayor's house, where he asked for shelter for the night. The mayor and his wife made the boy supper, but when they offered food to his pooly dog, he told them not to. Instead, he gave the little dog coal to eat. In fact, the coal was still aflame from the fire. The mayor said, "I have never seen anything like it in my life that a prince should feed a fine dog with burning coal." "Mayor, have you ever heard of a person being buried alive?" "Yes, I have." "And did it happen far from this place?" "It's a long ride by horse from here." In the morning, the prince awoke and again fed the pooly dog with burning coal. And he rode until he eventually arrived at a second village. Here again he sought shelter with the local mayor. They fed him a fine meal, and again he asked for burning coal to feed his Pooly Dog. The mayor said, "I have never heard of such a thing before. How is it that such a fine dog eats hot coals?" "Yes, but have you ever heard, Mayor, of a person being buried alive?" "I have, and it happened not far from here. If you ride fast, you will soon be there." So after a good night's sleep, the prince continued his journey. He arrived in his own village the next day at noon, where again he sought shelter with the local mayor. They fed him a fine meal, and again he asked for burning coal to feed his Pooly Dog. "I have never heard of such a thing before. How is it that such a fine dog eats hot coals?" "Yes, but have you ever heard, Mayor, of a person being buried alive?" "Yes, I have, and it happened here." "Is the man still alive who buried the woman alive?" "Yes, he is." "Then please, Mayor, come with me." Then they went to see the landlord. But he had become so poor during the last 16 years that all he had was a pile of burning coal in the middle of his house and nothing more. The prince strode up to the pile of coal and gave a piece to his Pooly Dog to eat. "I have never heard of such a thing before. How is it that such a fine dog eats hot coals?" "Yes, but have you ever heard of a person being buried alive?" "Yes, it happened to be my wife." "Could you show me where she was buried?" "I was not in the cemetery, so I don't know where they buried her." "That is such a shame. Is there a man or woman alive who attended that funeral?" "Yes, there is." "Go then and call those people here." So off the landowner went and called his neighbours. Then they went to the cemetery, and the neighbours told the prince which grave was his mother's. As the boy stopped in front of the grave, he said, "Dark wooden coffin, come up to the light." And the coffin came up at once. "Open your lid, coffin." The lid of the coffin sprang open. His mother was still alive in the coffin, and she was sewing a shirt for her son. Then he took his mother by her arm and led her to his father. "Well, father, do you recognize her as your wife?" "Yes, I do. Pooly Dog, you must turn back into John at once." And the Pooly Dog turned back into John. "Do you recognize this man as your servant?" "Yes." "Do you recognize me as your son?" "Yes." That was why my dear mother had to suffer for 16 long years under the ground. "John, take the horse, ride home, and live a happy life with your wife." The boy stayed with his father, and they became 7 times richer than ever before. And they all lived happily ever after. You may think this a tale, but this story is true. Hungarian Folk Tales. Brave Prince Nick. Once upon a time, in a land far away, there was a king. And the king had 3 daughters. Every morning he took a walk in the forest with his daughters, until one morning when a large black cloud appeared in the sky. "King, you must give me your eldest daughter, or else I will snatch the sun from the sky." Then the king said, If you are a good spirit, come down. If you are a bad spirit, go away. So off the cloud went, and it took the sun with it. The next morning they went for a walk again, and the black cloud appeared again. King, give me your middle daughter, or else I will take the moon from the sky. The king did not do as the cloud demanded, and so it took the moon. On the third day, the cloud appeared again. King, give me your youngest daughter, or else I will steal all the stars. The king did not obey, and so it stole the stars. The world was ruled by darkness. One day, Prince Nick went down to the courtyard for water with his younger brother. Brother, I would bring back the sun, the moon, and all the stars if the king would give me half of his kingdom and his youngest daughter's hand in marriage. The king heard what the prince said, and he sent for him, saying, Look, my boy, if you do not do as you suggested, I shall have you executed. Give me a good sword, your majesty, and I shall set forth. And off he went through 7 lands. Eventually he came to a silver forest, and there he found a silver bridge. He struck the bridge, and a plank came loose. Then a dragon rode up on a horse, and the horse stumbled. The dragon said, May dogs drink your blood. I have crossed this bridge for 3 years, but my horse has never stumbled. What happened? Fire for me, water for you, both of us must perish. The dragon climbed down from his horse and said, Prince Nick, come out from your hiding place under the bridge. I have known you since you were no bigger than a seed, that I would have to do battle with you. How shall we fight? Wrestling, sticks, or swords? Wrestling is for dogs, sticks are for swineherds, swords are for heroes. And they began to fight. They fought and fought until Prince Nick cut off 2 of the dragon's heads. Prince Nick, spare my last head, and I will return all the stars to you. Where are they? There, under my saddle. Take them. Prince Nick took the stars from under the saddle, chopped the dragon's last head off, and walked away. He soon reached a golden forest. There he went up to a golden bridge. He struck the bridge with his sword. 2 planks broke off, and he hid himself under the bridge. The 7-headed dragon appeared, and its horse stumbled. I have crossed this bridge for 7 years, but my horse has never stumbled. Why does it do it now? Fire for me, water for you, both of us must perish. Prince Nick, come out from your hiding place under the bridge. I have known since you were no bigger than a seed that I would have to do battle with you. How shall we fight? Wrestling, sticks, or swords? Wrestling is for dogs, sticks are for swineherds, swords are for heroes. They fought and fought until at last Prince Nick cut off 6 of the dragon's heads. Prince Nick, spare my last head, and I will return you the moon. It is under my saddle. Prince Nick took the moon out and put it with the stars, and then he chopped off the dragon's last head. He walked, and soon Prince Nick arrived at the diamond forest. He went to the diamond bridge and struck it with his sword. 3 planks broke off, and he hid himself. A dragon appeared with 12 heads, and its horse stumbled on the bridge. What happened? I have never stumbled in all 12 years. Fire for me, water for you, both of us must perish. I have known since you were no bigger than a seed that I would have to do battle with you. How shall we fight? Wrestling, sticks, or swords? Wrestling is for dogs, sticks are for swineherds, swords are for heroes. They fought and fought until Prince Nick cut off 11 of the dragon's heads. Prince Nick, spare me my last head, and I shall give you the sun. It is there, under my saddle. The dragon had a horse with only 3 legs, but that horse could run faster than any horse with 4. Prince Nick put the stars and the moon under the saddle, mounted the horse with 3 legs, chopped the dragon's last head off and rode away. As he was riding out of the forest, a little man spoke to him from the top of a tree. "Prince Nick, do you really think that the sun, the moon and the stars are yours to keep?" "Of course. Who else should have them?" "Me." Prince Nick climbed the tree to do battle with the little man. While he was climbing, the little man jumped down into the saddle of the horse with 3 legs, and he rode off. Prince Nick climbed down and followed him, and as he was walking, he met a man. The man was crying. "Why are you crying?" "I'm crying because if I open my eyes, I can see through the world but see no further. Come with me, and you will be able to use your eyes again." They walked on and met another man who sat crying. "Why are you crying?" "I'm crying because if I take one step, I will step over the world, but then can step no further." "Come with us and you will be able to step again." As they walked, they reached a house where the little man lived. But he was not at home. Then Prince Nick said to the first man, "Have a good look around and try to find the little man with the long beard." "I can see him. He is sitting on top of a willow tree in the middle of the sea." "Catch the little man for me," he told the second man. And the second man took one step, caught the little man, and took him to Prince Nick by his beard. Then Prince Nick took the sun, the moon, and the stars away from him. He let the stars fly up into the sky, and they lit his way home. And as he journeyed, he let the moon go too, and as he grew close to home, he released the sun, so that he would arrive back in the bright daylight. When the 3 young men arrived home, the king gave them his daughters, and he granted Prince Nick half his kingdom. They had a wonderful wedding, and they all lived happily ever after.